All right, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about 7 tips to overcoming childhood obesity. And I think this is probably one of the most important lectures that I've made. And hopefully it's helpful. But there's so many different reasons that we need to be considering what is happening to our future generation. Because obviously obesity rates have been climbing steadily since about 1970s. Obesity in children and teenagers is 10 times higher now. And that is a problem. And it got even worse with the COVID pandemic. And it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. If we don't help these kids, we are failing them. And this is a hard topic to talk about because I don't ever want a child that is developing to feel inadequate or feel bullied or feel like something's wrong with them because you're so sensitive to a lot of different things as during the childhood years, and they deserve love too. Whether your kid's fat, small, skinny, thick, tall, short, missing some arms, they all deserve love, care, and affection. But we are failing our kids if, as a community, if we're not doing things to make sure that they're able to live strong, healthy, long lives. Because the damage that is done by neglecting these children and allowing them to continue to be obese as a child will bleed into their adulthood. And when they're a child, they don't have a choice. That was not their choice, but it's going to become their problem. So it's up to the adults in the room and the regulators and advocacy groups and social scientists and doctors and everybody as a community to help children because they are our future. So what are some consequences of childhood obesity? Well, number one is you have the poor body self-image. And this self-image of the way your body looks can also permeate into other areas of what you think you're capable of and your confidence. And I grew up and I was never someone that was overweight, but I still had body image issues. I had gynecomastia, which is essentially man boobs when I was a little kid, which is relatively common in males as they grow through puberty. And that was traumatic. I didn't want to take off my shirt when I would go to pool parties or the beach. I was very, very insecure. I also thought I had cankles because I had really big calves and thick ankles. But meanwhile, as I got older, I realized that was pretty much an athletic advantage. That's why I could jump so high. But there's just these different things that we go through as kids. We're comparing our bodies to other people's bodies. Now, imagine if you're an obese child, you're being judged by social media, you're being judged by your peers, you're being judged by your parents. It's a lot. And it's quite frankly unnecessary if we take the right steps to help these children. Overweight children get bullied more often. And one of their coping mechanisms is to retreat to a safe place, such as their home. And then often they seek food as a form of comfort because a lot of the foods that you can get that are ultra processed give you a sense of comfort. They give you a dopamine rush. Then a lot of these kids suffer from depression and anxiety. They also have health consequences like metabolic syndrome. My dad's a pediatrician and so is my sister, but I remember talking to my dad around the time when I was in middle school, and he was telling me that type 2 diabetes in the pediatric community used to be thought to be adult onset diabetes. And then we changed it to type 2 because children started getting it. And he never saw children with type 2 diabetes really when he was getting started in medicine. And then it became quite common. And often these kids end up with things like fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which affects a female's menstrual cycle. And the fatty liver can lead to a potential future liver replacement, right? Which they don't come cheap, and there are not a lot of them. And these kids often have poor exercise tolerance because physical activity, as you become more and more overweight, becomes much more difficult because it's just harder to move. It's kind of like a rich get richer, poor get poorer situation. And oftentimes Obesity is also related to breathing disorders. You're more common to have asthma if you're obese. It's more common to have sleep apnea if you're obese. And then there's the eating disorders such as anorexia, bulimia, the binge and purge of where kids, because they feel fat, now they're going to go force themselves to essentially vomit their food in the bathroom after they've eaten because they're disgusted with themselves. Like, this is a common thing. And these are common consequences of obesity. Then there's the shortened life expectancy. Kids of this generation are not going to live as long as their parents if the trajectory continues, because they're starting off with chronic diseases at a much earlier age that are essentially rotting them from the inside out. So we're not giving them a fair shake, because at the end of the day, these kids don't have a job. They're not buying stuff. You parents are buying this stuff. And I'm not, putting any disrespect to a parent. I'm not one, but eventually I will be one. I've helped raise some of my younger siblings. And there are things you can do to help mitigate this, and your kids will thank you for it. A lot of the things we're going to talk about in this specific talk are going to come from two papers. One was published in the Journal of Family Medicine and Primary Care called Childhood Obesity, the Causes and Consequences, and then Obesity Effects on Child Health. So one of the things we need to remember as parents is that, remember your mission as a parent is to love and support your child, regardless of how they look. Love and support them is to understand them. And I think it's important whenever we're trying to when we're trying to help our child get healthier, that we don't think, oh, we need them to lose stuff. They're fat. We need to, no, don't do that, because that's traumatic. I think it's important to reframe the goal of gain instead of loss. You want to help them gain strength. You want them to gain energy. You want them to gain health. It's not just about losing weight. So think about ways to challenge them, to show that they're becoming more proficient at something that also has positive health benefits. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. So one thing we can do is we can prepare lunches for school. So if you're looking at you should know what your kid's eating for lunch. You should, okay? You should know what they're eating for lunch. And unfortunately, these schools have a lot of trash for food. So if all they're eating is fast food and microwave stuff and all this stuff that's not really that healthy, then it would be worthwhile considering finding a way to help them prepare lunches, okay? And make them part of that process. Help them choose the things that they like, right? It's almost better to help them make some of their lunch and add a little slightly unhealthy snack in there than to just let them figure it out when they go to school and eat whatever the school's giving them. Because a lot of cafeterias are not serving real food. I remember when I was a little kid, my cafeteria was serving McDonald's every day. I got away with it because I played soccer, right? Soccer players run more than anybody. But that was not optimal for anybody. And then it's important to read food labels with your children, right? Get them in the habit of reading and understanding the food labels so they make the best decisions for themselves. Set the guidelines. And I had a previous lesson where I talked about this is how you read food labels. Go through that with them. And then you too need to start doing it, because a lot of adults don't know how to do this. So read the food labels with your children and then explain to them, hey, I know you like this, but why don't we get something that's a little bit better, that you're going to like a little bit more, that's a little healthier, right? Because then they will probably pay more attention to it than you do, and they can help you make healthier decisions, because kids are very perceptive. And then you want to think about gamifying activity. There's so many different ways to do this, but we have Apple Watches now. We have all these smart watches, the Fitbits, your phones. You have to find ways to probably create competition. See how many steps your kids are getting. If your kid's getting less than 10,000 steps, it's not okay. Okay? They're not active enough. That means they're sitting around way too much. So gamify it. Maybe put you guys in a group and challenge each other. Me and my mom sometimes challenge each other. Me and some of my siblings challenge each other with my Apple Watch. And I always lose my mom because she's like, it feels like she's running a triathlon before I wake up. But find a way to gamify activity, because children love games. And then you want to have a dedicated time to connect with your children. I know it's hard. I know we're busy sometimes, just trying to to do all we can to provide an amazing life for our kids. But if you don't even know your kids, what's the point? Find time to connect with your kids, slow down, cook with your children, cook as a family, go through that process together, sit down, turn off the computers, turn off the televisions, and just sit and connect with your family at least once a week. That is so powerful, and your kids are going to remember that. And then enroll your kids in sports or extracurricular physical activities that can encourage movement and play with their peers. And I understand you got a budget for that. So if it's budgeting is an issue, try to find different avenues like the Boys and Girls Club, or finding different groups in the neighborhood that are, if it's a safe neighborhood that these kids can play with, but find ways to get them out of the house and outside, so where they're moving, especially during times where it's not super cold outside, obviously. All right, so having indoor gyms, going to the YMCA, these are some options. And then you want to model healthy behaviors because your kids are watching you. We like to tell kids what to do, but at the end of the day, they're going to watch you. They're going to mirror what you're doing. All right, so model healthy behaviors. Your kids should see you exercise, and that's going to encourage them to try to exercise. And then you want to limit sugary beverages, because there's no reason, whether you're a kid or adult, for you to be consuming all these cubes of sugar every day. It's not healthy for the development of the brain. You're just fast tracking your way into type 2 diabetes and hypertension. So it's just not healthy. So if you want some sort of sweet-ish beverage, opt for the sugar-free versions that have alternative sweeteners like stevia, monk fruit, and stuff like that. So stay away from some of the sweeteners like saccharin and aspartame, but there are options. Shift to that instead of having liquid calories that are making the issues worse. And then you want to limit your screen time. It seems like the new pacifier is all these digital products, these iPads and iPhones and tablets. But you got to limit that. Find ways to set boundaries. And I understand being a parent's hard and you just want them to be quiet sometimes. You want your own peace of mind. But you have to find a good balance. If your kid's doing a little too much, books exist. They can read a real book. Okay, that's for starters. Second off, find some physical activity that they enjoy and support it as much as possible. But get them away from just staring at screens all day. In conclusion, parenting is hard. So give yourself some grace. If your kid is not necessarily trending in the right direction when it comes to the health, it's okay. Parenting is hard. Don't be so judgmental to yourself. But it still means it's time to make some positive changes. Help them. They deserve your help. And try to enforce a healthy lifestyle at home. Many of these obesity-related problems can be avoided if you avoid these issues at home, if you model good behaviors at home. What children learn at home about healthy eating, exercising, and making the right nutritional choices will eventually spill over into other aspects of their life. And this is going to have the biggest impact in the choices that they make when selecting foods to consume at school or at restaurants, and when it comes to their activity. And if we focus on these causes over time, I believe, and some of the research supports, that we can decrease childhood obesity and lead a healthier life in society as a whole. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for listening. And as always, if you have any comments or questions, please drop them down below. And I'll see you in an upcoming lecture.